Jackie's 29th podcast, May 17th, 2025, and we're rolling.
Hello, my name is Jackie Geringer McDermott, and we're recording live from the English Valley's History Center in North English, Iowa. We're going to start the day off a little different. I'm going to give a plug for the Main Street Pub and Grub, coming very, very soon to downtown North English, Iowa. This is a project of Trent Forrest and Jake McLaughlin, and we'll let you know when it gets open. And it's going to be at 131 South Main. If you all remember in the olden days, this would be Elwood's, and this would be the pool hall, and that's where it's at. And here's another view of the same thing. The corner building is the law office, and the other building is that one. And we have another thing to show you this morning. This is our most recent acquisition. It's from Mike and Carolyn Elwood, and it's a history of newspapers in Iowa, a survey of 125 years of Iowa journalism, the pageant of the press. It's really a neat thing. It's got all sorts of pictures of newspapers inside. This diary was written by my great-great-aunt, Mary Elizabeth Claypool Wade, who was known as Libby Wade. She turned 72 years old in 1946. Here is a picture of Aunt Lib with her three oldest granddaughters, and they are Hazel Cobb, Evelyn Kurtz, and Belva Yoss. We'll read and talk about a week in the diary and then switch to happenings around the History Center and feature stories. December 23rd, 1946. Nice day, not so cold. Jenny and Frida and Mickey were here in the evening. Had lots to tell about their trip. Mary R. was here. I got 2 dozen eggs at 84 cents a dozen. Hattie was here. Lib's daughter-in-law, Jenny, has just returned from a trip to Texas to see her sister-in-law, Anna Cray, family. Jenny's daughter, Evelyn Kurtz, and her husband, Wayne Kurtz, and their 4-year-old daughter, Suzanne Kurtz, were with her on the trip. Mickey is the son of Jenny's daughter, Belva Yoss. Mary Regsager is the Lib's egg 80 and friend from down the street, and she's right here in this picture. This is of all the Regsagers. And Hattie Newberry Killian is Libby's 55-year-old neighbor. December 24th, 1946. Received wedding announcement. Louis B.C. and Vivian McDaniel. Mr. Thomas's funeral is today. Kitties received treats by Santa this p.m. It is a lovely day. Snow is all gone. Baked bread and cookies. Belva and Evelyn and Hazel came late in the evening with gifts. Frida was here earlier and brought a gift. Louis Benton Claypool is Libby's great-nephew, the grandson of her brother, Benton Claypool, and the son of her nephew, Jaunty Claypool. Louis was married on December 21st, 1946 in New Orleans, Louisiana, to Vivian Janice McDaniel, a graduate of the Tour Infirmary School of Nursing. Louis graduated from Parnell High School, attended the University of Iowa from 1934 to 1939, and was a senior at the College of Medicine at Tulane University in New Orleans. They were headed in June to Phoenix for his internship, and he practiced medicine in the Phoenix area, the rest of his life. I am looking forward to a visit from his daughters, Johanna and Annette, this fall. Willis Thomas's funeral is in North English today. Santa Claus arrived in downtown North English on Christmas Eve, December 24th. He comes earlier in the month these days. Lib's 3 oldest granddaughters, who were Hazel and Evelyn and Belva, arrived with gifts, as did her first granddaughter-in-law, Frida Wade. December 25th, 1946. We were at Wayne's for dinner. Walters went to Frida's folks. Hazel to Viola's. And Mr. and Mrs. Yoss were at Wayne's. Had a nice time. Beth and Jean Holmes's wife were here a while in the evening. It was a lovely day, no snow. Wayne, or Perky Wade, was their oldest son, and his wife was Jenny. Their daughter Belva, who's right there, and her husband Don Yoss. Here's a picture of him. And their infant son Mick, along with Don's parents, were in attendance at the dinner, as well as unmarried Harold on this side, or Stub Wade, Evelyn, right there, and her husband, Wayne Kurtz, and 4-year-old Sue. Walter, or Bud, is right there. He and Frida went to Mr. and Mrs. McCreary's, her parents' house. Hazel and Glenn Cobb went to the home of his half-sister, Viola, or Mickey Ballard, and her husband, Ralph Ballard. Beth Holmes was Lib's niece. She's right here in this picture. She's the daughter of her sister, Sarah Myrtle Claypool Mall. Beth, like my grandma Geringer, was close to Lib, their only remaining biological aunt, since her own parents had died several years ago. December 26, 1946, the day after. Put in the AM straightening stuff up. A little colder. Snow was predicted. Larry O'Brien went back to California. Lena was here in the evening. They spent Christmas at her folks. Larry O'Brien is in this picture on the end of all the O'Briens. In the front row is Ellen Gerard, and over here is Ed O'Brien. They were friends of the family. Lena Wallace Wade, who was there in the evening, was the wife of second son Warren, or Mike Wade, and her family had spent Christmas with her parents, Stella and Roy Wallace. December 27th, 1946. Cloudy, dark, cold. Snow predicted. Maud and Miss McDonald here. Sun had been shining, but a rain cloud came, and a hard rain like spring followed. Temperature ranged from 32 degrees to 72 degrees in different parts of the state. Lib gets her news and weather from the radio. Maud Foster Claypool was Libby's friend and the wife of nephew Ray Claypool, the son of her brother Vernon Claypool. December 28th, 1946. Iowa is 100 years old today. Ceremonies on the radio. Governor Blue was one of the speakers. Stella Wallace was here, and also Jenny. She brought me material, print for a dress, 49 cents per yard, light blue. Snowing here a little in the evening, had the oil barrel filled. Robert Blue was the governor, and Stella Wallace was the mother of daughter-in-law Lena Wade. Sunday, December 29th, 1946. Cold, 10 degrees above zero about all day. Snow on the ground. A good day to stay indoors. Had a letter from Anna last evening. She is to go to the hospital today. An operation Tuesday morning. J.C. Stevens, their friend, died a week ago yesterday. Had cancer. Anna Wade Cray is Lib's only daughter, and she lives in Texas with her husband, Richard Cray. December 30th, 1946. Sent Olin a birthday card and a letter. Cold, 5 degrees below zero this morning. Bertha called and said Mamie is in Iowa City Hospital. Has a baby boy born Saturday night at 10 o'clock. weighed 6 pounds, 6 ounces. Frida was here, also Hattie. Russell went to the Odd Fellows Lodge tonight. Sue was here. Olin Mall is her nephew. He's right here in this picture. And he's also the son of JJ and Sarah Myrtle Mall. Olin lived in Austin, Minnesota and worked for Hormel. His birthday was December 31st, 1899, the last day of the century. Bertha Claypool Geringer was my grandmother. She was Lib's niece and the daughter of her brother Benton. Mamie Geringer was the wife of Glenn or Sparky Geringer. Their first son was Dale Geringer. Dale served in the Army for many years, including tours in Vietnam, where he was wounded, and continued to work for the government in later years. He married Jennifer, who is from Korea, and they raised their sons, Tim and Tom, in Iowa City. He spends his time in Korea and Las Vegas these days. Son Russell Wade lives with Lib and is a member of the Odd Fellows Lodge a block away. Sue Kurtz, who is 4 years old, is Lib's oldest great-granddaughter. December 31st, 1946, the last day of 1946. 2 degrees below zero this morning. Was 0 at 11 a.m. Been cold all day. Sunshine. Baked bread in the a.m. Anxious to hear from Anna because Anna was undergoing an operation. That's the end of the book. In the back of the book, Lib wrote a few more items. Daryl Popham's twin boys arrived November 12th. That would be Ronald and Donald Popham from the class of 1965. And I wanted to show you this. We've got several of these big pictures. Right here and here are Ronnie and Donnie. And all these pictures are also in this Every Wanted EV book that we'll have for sale this summer. Maud C. is working at the Maid-Rite, began November 12th. There's a Maid-Rite sandwich shop uptown in 1946, which was there for many years. Walter and Frida bought the place where Burslers live, $2,200, to get possession about December 15th, I think. Burslers bought the Van D house. And we learned last week that this house had been a Mahannah, belonged to the Mahannahs, and Burslers were renting it, and then Walter and Frida bought it. Ruth Eden's address, April 26, 1947. Mrs. L.G. Eden's, Lincoln, Nebraska, Box 271. Ruth Calvin had been married to Lib's nephew, John Josiah or Jack Mall Jr., and had a daughter, Betty Mall, who later married Wayne Shaw. They divorced, and she married Lake Edens. Ruth Edens came back to live in North English in later years. Since this entry is dated April 26, 1947, that leads me to believe that Lib did not write a 1947 diary. Russell received car license 48-2759 on a Ford car on January 16, 1946, purchased from Ayers Motor Company for $1,104.98, and the tax was $22. Ayers Motor Company was on the lower end of Main Street. On December 4th, Russell received license plate 48-54 for 1947. That is the end of the diary portion of the program for this week. Next week, we will do a Zoom Forward week, as this is the last diary entry of 1946. And that's the end of this little book, and I'm going to be sorry to see it go. In 2 weeks, we'll be starting in the next diary, which is May of 1950. So in the Zoom Forward week, we need to tell the readers what will be changing in Libby's world and in our town of North English between January 1st, 1947 and May 15th, 1950. I will go through the newspapers and my Ancestry.com and learn what I can. In the meantime, I have a question for the listeners. In May of 1950, Lib says that the little folks were in to visit, and she describes them as the Hall twins, Karen and Claudia. The Hall twins are Vance and Virginia, or as they are now known, Vance Hall and Jenny Miller. Claudia is Lib's great-granddaughter, the oldest child of Walter or Bud and Frida Wade. But who is Karen? I had a few thoughts, but none of them checked out when I did the math. So I need the help from my listeners. Another question came up this week. Someone called me to ask which house on Southeast Street, around the corner from Lib's house, was Bud and Frida Wade's house. I think I know the answer, but I want some of you to jog my memory on that answer too. The English Valleys History Center promotes the rich history of the communities within the river valleys of the North, Middle, and South English rivers. It encompasses an area roughly served by the English Valley School District from Deep River to near Parnell and from Watcher to Kinross. This also includes the communities of Millersburg, North English, Webster, and South English. Please send donations to the English Valleys History Center, P.O. Box 70, North English, Iowa, 52316. Our first featured story today is Vandy Kerkhove. Here is a painting of the Armagh Church that hangs in the English Valleys History Center. The Armagh Catholic Church was west of North English, off the end of the pavement to Millersburg, and then a few miles further on south on the road. There is only a cemetery there today. My great-grandparents, Louis and Mary Vandy Kerkhove, lived nearby and attended church there, and so did my family when I was little, as the church was part of the North English, Millersburg, and Armagh cluster of Catholic churches. And back here in the corner of the picture is the house that was owned by Alfred and Elaine Vandy and family. Over there. That house is now owned by their grandson, Todd Vandy, and his wife, Sarah. I hear the house is being torn down as they build a new home. When I first started genealogy when I was a teenager, I heard about two books that my grandma, Gladys Keller's cousin, Margaret Wagner, had written.
This is 52, like you.
The big blue book is the Wagner book, and the small red book is the Dersch book. Margaret Wagner was able to sift out the mystery of the Vandy Kerkhove family name and explain it so we could all understand. The last name was spelled V-A-N-D-E-E, capital D-E-E, capital K-E-R-K-H-O-V-E. Great-Grandma Mary was a Wagner by birth, and her family's story is in the blue book. Great-Grandpa Lewis's family is in the red book. Lewis and Mary originally went by Vandy Kerkhove. From what I have heard, Vandy is equivalent to house of in the old country, so Vandy Kerkhove meant house of Kerkhove. In later years, Lewis and Mary just used Vandy for their last name. However, not everyone agreed with this idea. For example, their oldest son, Alfred Kerkhove, decided to use Kerkhove. He lived in Minnesota. The second son, Lawrence Vandy, lived in North English up on the hill with his wife, Ida Neal Vandy. Their brother, Joe Vandy, was married to Mary O'Brien from North English, and they lived in the Quad Cities. And their brother, Lester Vandy, was from Cedar Rapids. The girls took their married names. Jessie Seal from Louisiana, Gladys Keller from North English and later Palo, Catherine Johnson, who lived most of her life in Keswick, Clara Bonneter from North English, who was the grandmother of my friend and classmate, Diane Bonneter Castens from Lanark, Illinois, Doris Bear, whose children all attended Tri-County schools, Inez Neal, and Stella Viverka of Kelowna, Illinois. This picture is from their younger days, and the 11 children who grew to adulthood are pictured. In the back, from left, are Lester Vandy, Joe Vandy, Alfred Kerkhove, Inez Neal, Lawrence Vandy, Stella Viverka, and Clarence Bonneter. In the middle are Jessie Seal and Gladys Keller. That right there is my grandma above her dad's head. In front are Katherine Johnson, Marion Lewis, and Doris Bear. Lewis and Mary farmed in the North English area except for 12 years spent in Pipestone, Minnesota, where his parents had moved. In 1940, they retired and moved into North English on a house on Lakeview Street, near where the doctor's office is now located. My mom, Mary Etheldine Keller Geringer Abbott, stayed with them sometimes when she attended high school in North English, as she lived in the country at the Bonneter place with her parents at the time. In all the census records up until 1950, Lewis and Mary are listed as Van D. Kerkhove, and in the 1950 census, it says Lewis and Mary Van D. On their obituaries, it says Van D., but on their tombstone is Van D. Kerkhove without the H. Lewis and Mary were married almost 64 years. In this picture from their elderly days, the children are, starting on this side by my fingers, Katherine Johnson, Lawrence Van D., Stella Viverka, Lester Van D., Clara Bonneter, Joseph Van D., Gladys Keller, and Doris Bear. Jessie Seal, Inez Neal, and Alfred Kerkhove had already passed away by then. Lewis also had a brother who changed his Van D. Kerkhove last name. His name was Peter, and he called himself Peter Kerkhove. Some of Peter's descendants are the Dale and Doris Kerkhove family from North English and the Francis and Helen Kerkhove family from South English. Lewis's brother John Van D. Kerkhove has the entire last name on his tombstone, and his children were either Van D. Kerkhove or just plain Van D. For example, Stephen or Ted Van D. from Deep River, who was married to Verla Van D., and his descendants, and also Frances Pilkington from North English and her family. And finally, their parents, who I would have thought would have had the entire last name in their obituaries, are listed as John and Margaret Kerkhove when they died up in Pipestone, Minnesota, having never returned to Iowa to live like some of the sons did. It's all explained in the Red Book and in Find a Grave and Ancestry.com. I am also delighted that Sarah Gorsh Van D. has also taken a huge interest in genealogy and has done a lot of work on Find a Grave to update records and search for more information, since we now have more advanced ways of finding information. Sarah also puts lots of pictures out on the internet for researchers to find. Our second featured story this week is Graham Hardware and the Mahannah Connection. You might remember from previous stories about Clark and Sophia Mahannah, who came to North English many, many years ago to the big house on the north side of West Clark Street. Here is a picture of Clark Mahannah and his boys. They had a son named Curtis Dow Mahannah, who is right here in the picture, who was a photographer and an undertaker and a furniture dealer. Curtis's son Russell took over the business after his death in 1946, and then Russell's son-in-law Jack Ross took over the business, which was located at 124 South Main Street in North English. Here is a picture of Curtis Dow and Eva Williams Mahannah. And here is a picture of the Curtis Dow Mahannah family when their children were younger. He was a photographer, so there are several pictures of this family. And here's a picture of them when they were older. Their son, Ernest, or Big Mahannah, is over here on this side, this one right here. He was born in North English in 1896. He graduated from North English High School in 1915, where he was a prominent athlete during the succeeding years after high school. He was a pitcher on some of the more noted North English baseball teams. Ernest served in the U.S. Army in World War I from May 7, 1917 to June 12, 1919, and held the rank of sergeant in the Medical Corps. For many years, he was associated with his brother Ross in the Mahannah furniture and undertaking business. He was married to his first wife, Della Lorene, known as Lorene Hardy Mahannah, and they had 2 children, Mary Elaine, who later in life was married to Ralston Cox, who owned a body shop in North English where he worked on wrecked vehicles, etc., and a son named Curtis William or Bill Mahannah. Bing and Lorene were divorced. Ernest or Bing Mahannah married Maxine Coop and passed away in California in 1968. Lorraine Graham later married Ernest Graham, who had been active in the hardware stores in town for many years, starting in 1918 when he worked for Roy Evans at Evans Hardware Store, where he worked for 28 years. In the late 1940s, he transferred to North English Hardware or Miller Hardware. He had previously been married to Agnes Gilchrist Mahannah, who passed away in 1946. In 1949, Lorraine and Ernie opened a hardware and gift store called Graham Hardware. Here is the picture of the store that they opened in their house. This house is at the corner of Oak Street and Main Street, and the address is 102 North Main Street now. The house had belonged to Ina Bell Claypool, the widow of Wallace Claypool. We have talked about Ina Bell in the 1946 Diaries of Lib Wade because she had a huge garden and gave produce to Lib. Ernie Graham was friendly and cheerful and very experienced in hardware. He was also a member of the Christian church where the Mahannah family belonged. Ernie was a member of the Civic Club to promote the town and was also on the town council for over 20 years. Ernest Graham passed away in 1952 at Graham Hardware at work on a Saturday morning. Here's the picture, here's the obituary that I found about that. In 1953, Holton Construction built the east wing that included the front door on Main Street, and in 1954, they built the south wing. Here's a picture of the hardware store from the Centennial. You'll notice the house is attached to a business. Lorraine Graham lived in the house. And here's the big picture from the wall of the Centennial, and you'll notice that the hardware store is right in the back. Lorraine Graham and her son, Bill Mahannah, worked side by side for many years at Graham Hardware. Her son, Bill Mahannah, owned and operated the hardware store for over 40 years, retiring in 1993. Here's the picture of them standing in the doorway. These pictures are all from the North English 150 yearbook by Scott Romine. Curtis William, or Bill Mahannah, was born in 1922 in North English and graduated from North English High School in 1939. Bill married Gilma Carter from the class of 1938 and 1943. Bill served in World War II in the Air Force from 1942 to 1946. He was a fighter pilot in the CBI theater, which means China and Burma and India areas. Bill was also a flight instructor and had his commercial flying license from 1958 to 1968. Bill and Gilma had a son, Ron, who's right there. He graduated from EV in 1965. Ron married Gloria and has 2 sons, Ryan and Kyle. Bill and Gilma's other son was Rodney Mahannah. And he's right here in this picture. He was in the class of 69. And he loved his Harley motorcycle and worked for Ralston Cox at the body shop. In addition to small appliances and hardware, Bill also sold and worked on lawn boy mowers. Gilma worked at the Fair Store and Graham Hardware. and Evans photography in her lifetime. As we remember it, Graham Hardware was divided in half, with hardware on one side and glassware and gifts on the other side. Dan Best remembers that Lorraine would speak about sales tax in this way: "And a penny for the governor." Susie Allison Lundberg said, "You spoke of Lorraine Graham, who owned Graham's Hardware on Main Street. There were times that I'd walk there after school or brownies and she would babysit me. Her home was in the back of the store. Mrs. Graham always made me feel welcome and comfortable, giving me a snack and letting me watch TV while she ran the store. Occasionally I would help her, LOL, but more than likely I was walking around in awe of all the beautiful giftware. I got my mom so many gifts from her store, some of which I have today. Mrs. Graham was so kind and always welcomed me with open arms. Thank you again, Jackie, for taking me down memory lane. You rock." More correspondence from this week. Pam Kavanaugh Shields said, "Thanks, Jackie. Just loving to listen to the stories of the families and businesses of our hometown in the Diary of Lib. You are to be commended for your passion and dedication to present the history of North English each Saturday. I, for one, am one of your dedicated followers." After she watched this week's broadcast, "Another great broadcast, Jackie. I remember Uncle Tom Hohenschel and where he lived. You might remember Tom was married to one of the Miller daughters. I sure hope all goes well with the grant." Mark Claypool said, "Jackie, there's a couple names, Ed and Alice Holden. I remember when I worked at Eldon's and I would carry Alice's groceries to her car. She was a hoot. Once again, another great week." Sharon Hagan answered my questions about the movie theater in Williamsburg, which she says is where the bowling alley is now, and the Marengo Theater was north of the bank. Vera Dye remembers her mother telling of going to the movies in Marengo. I talked to my friend and classmate, Helen Kirkpatrick Schwietert from Colesburg, Iowa and Lake Placid, Florida. She is now at her summer home on the Mississippi in Guttenberg. She liked the segment on the Miller Brick House and shared it with her cousin Joe Reynolds, who was raised in Sigourney. Joe's mother was Esther Kirkpatrick Reynolds. They learned that their grandparents, Orson Kirkpatrick and Esther Miller Kirkpatrick, his wife, lived in the brick house. Evelyn, who was Joe's mother, also taught at the nearby country school. I ran into Marty Aroik Mikesel at class night at the high school this week. She said, "What are you doing besides reading diaries?" That got me to thinking that maybe some of you would like to know a little more about me. I am the retired city clerk at Belle Plaine, and to keep busy these days, I'm the city clerk at Deep River. I live in Belle Plaine and go to church at the Watcher Methodist, so I'm often on the go. I love to travel and visit family. I also enjoy listening to bluegrass and country music. And of course, I'm crazy about history, especially of Iowa and Keokuk County and North English, my favorite subject. Our sympathies this week. That didn't work so well. I lost my pages. Need 1958. Which is clear at the front of the book. And the person that we're honoring is Margaret Sparrow. She's in the center of this page. Margaret Sparrow Hirschfield from the class of 1959. And we just learned of the passing of someone from my class, Carla Herman. She was a quiet, sweet girl who became a nurse and lived her life in the Sigourney area. Well, at least these are in alphabetical order. Carla is right there. If you have any pictures of anyone that you would like to share, or anything that we have for any upcoming program, please let me know. In the future, we are going to continue on with Millers. We're going to do Old Doc, Young Doc, Noah Miller, and others in the Miller family. We're also going to have a program on the Rebeccas and the Depot Fire and Texaco Station. I would also like to mention that the next English Valley Alumni Luncheon at Bryant's in Williamsburg Mall will be at 11:30 on June 30th. Please contact Alice Stramer or Linda Carter for reservations. There's a flyer on the EV Graduates page about the alumni reunion on July 26th. I'll be uptown afterwards, visiting with alumni and selling books. We are also interested in learning about historical English Valley's items that you might wish to donate to the History Center. Please contact Dave Jackson, Scott Romine, or any board member to donate. See you next week.
And that's a wrap. Great job, Jackie.